Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Thanks so much for joining me for today's devotional from Finding Free. Today is day 1, and the devotional is entitled More Than a Dumb Dog. A guy by the name of Hank grew up in Manhattan in the late 1940s. In 1939, his parents, who were both Jewish, left Germany for America, trying to escape some of the conflict, and it just happened just before World War II broke out, so just in time they got out of there. They settled in Manhattan, and they had their son Hank in 1945. Hank was a smart kid, but he struggled in school. His relationship with his parents was a little tumultuous in that his dad thought that he was lazy because, well, he liked non-stressful moments, and he kind of was more of a laid-back kind of kid. He really struggled in school, and so his dad had a nickname for him that he called him a dumb dog. You dumb dog. And he recounts this experience. Listen to what Hank says. He says, "When I was growing up in New York City, I was called stupid and lazy. And I was told that I was not living up to my potential. It was, without a doubt, painful. I spent most of my time covering up the fact that reading, writing, spelling, math, science, actually every subject but lunch was really difficult for me. If I went to the store and paid the bill with paper money, I was given coins back for change, and I had no idea how to count up the change in my hand. I just trusted that everyone was being honest." Despite Hank's troubles, he graduated from high school, and then he enrolled in Yale School of Drama, where he eventually earned his master's degree. From there, he landed a few small gigs and different acting opportunities, from the small stage to some commercials, and he began to be a regular on a show that was just starting, which led to a successful career in Hollywood, actually. And though the struggles that plagued Hank during his career, they caused him so many troubles, he actually found himself that he had to struggle to memorize the scripts that he would work from, and his memory was kind of fuzzy, and so he would actually improvise a lot as he acted on this TV show. But it wasn't until his 30s, when he had gotten married and had a stepson who had similar struggles as he did when he was his age. He struggled in math and reading and writing and some of those things. They took him to a doctor, and they discovered that he had dyslexia. Well, back in the 1950s, dyslexia wasn't really a common thing, and so what Hank had struggled with was, well, they just thought he was being lazy, when in fact he really had a very difficult learning disability. In the early 2000s, Hank had an agent that encouraged him to write a children's book addressing dyslexia to help kids cope, and he made and created this lovable character who was a 4th grade boy with disabilities that came to life as what he called Hank Zipper. In all, Hank wrote 17 books in his series. That young kid from Manhattan who battled dyslexia went on to become an actor, a producer, a director, and a kid's author. That dumb dog received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1981 for his role on the wildly famous 1970 sitcom Happy Days. Hank solidified his place in pop culture with his signature 2 thumbs up and his catchphrase, "Ay," as the Fonz, or better known as Henry Winkler, on Happy Days. When we think about the struggles and challenges we have, sometimes people look at us and they say, well, you just need to focus on your weaknesses. Focus on your weaknesses is something that we hear all the time. And the challenge for us is that, what if we focused on our strengths? A guy by the name of Tom Rath, who authored a book called Strengths Finder 2.0, asks this: do you know what you're best at every day? Chances are you don't. Rath created a test to discover how you can innately discover how you're wired and what you excel at, where you fit in when you leverage your strengths to the best of your ability. And so he really flips this concept on its head and says, instead of focusing on your weaknesses and trying to compensate, he says, let's focus instead on your strengths, and really what we would call how God wired you. When we focus on our strengths, we're not competing with each other for the same thing. We're realizing that God wired us in a uniquely wonderful way. In Psalm 139, David talks about this. He says that I am fearfully and wonderfully, or in some translations, I am made wonderfully complex in how God makes us. God created you fearfully and wonderfully. And the word fearful in the vernacular for today brings to mind timidity, anxiety, or worry, but really what it talks about there in the scriptures is that it's a sense of amazing awe that God really put a lot of time and attention into how He created us. Most of our lives, we might tell ourselves that, or we're being told that we aren't doing enough, we're not trying enough, or being enough. Imagine going to an art exhibit that was unveiled and seeing an artist work so hard to create a masterpiece. And we walk up with a little paintbrush and a little bit of paint and we try to improve upon what the artist already did. You can imagine the crowd would just be stunned, and the artist would probably be greatly offended. Now think about your life. That God made you perfect, that you're not broken, that the things that you look at and maybe you compare yourself to somebody else and say, well, why am I different, or why do I seem like I'm incomplete in a sense? If you look at Psalm 139, I'll encourage you to study this out, get a copy of the book, and read Psalm 139, specifically verses 13 to 16, realizing how God made you wonderfully in your life. As we look today, we'll find this. Once you begin to see your personality as a strength and not a weakness, you'll learn to be free to impact your world for God's glory and others' good, just as a Jewish kid from Manhattan learned in his lifetime. For further study, go ahead and look up Psalm 139, verses 13 to 16. Thanks so much for joining me.